procedure, the suffering of 2317 can prevent an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario. For this reason, putting the poor girl out of her misery is not an option. Under no circumstances are narcotics, anesthesia, or other unapproved medications to be administered to 2317. She must be aware of what is going on for 110 Montauk to work. Hello everybody, I'm the Rubber. Today, we bring you an SCP Foundation Keter Class Object, SCP-231. SCP-231, also known as Special Personnel Requirements, is one of the classic items in the SCP Foundation series. 231 are 7 pregnant females, and whenever either one of them gives birth, a disaster will occur. SCP-231 1-7 was discovered after police searched a warehouse held by an organization named Children of the Scarlet King. 24 hours after being rescued, the first female, 2311, began to produce labor pain and give birth to an SCP, resulting in an incident that caused more than 100 casualties. Foundation personnel immediately took possession of remaining SCPs 2312-7 and, based on notebooks recovered from the cult, instituted Procedure 110 Montauk to prevent future occurrences. As to what kind of 110 Montauk procedure is, it has not been clearly specified in the document for the time being. But in the documents mentioned in Appendix 231B, the 110 Montauk procedure is not only terrible, but also causes severe pain and involves some kind of brutal behavior. All personnel assigned to 2317 must rotate out for 1 month of psychological counseling after 2 months on site. And all personnel assigned to SCP-231 will be transported to 231's containment blindfolded from Site 19 by a route including no fewer than 7 different forms of transportation, including but not limited to aircraft, automobile, underground tunnel, and others. Removal of the blindfold during the transport process is grounds for immediate termination. According to the Foundation, either an attempt to remove an SCP fetus or a mother's death will result in a catastrophic event. Now 6 of them have died, and only SCP-2317 is left. 2311 was killed during initial recovery operations while giving birth to an SCP. 2312 was killed while attempting to remove a second SCP fetus, immediately resulted in an incident. 2313 self-terminated following a prolonged period of distress caused by the implementation of Procedure 110 Montauk. The delivered SCP immediately led to an incident. 2314 was treated with SCP-500 that claims to cure the subject of all diseases. Despite the successful expulsion of all parts of the produced SCP, the excreted residue immediately underwent an event, causing numerous casualties, including 2314 herself. Due to the improper execution of the 110 Montauk procedure, 2315 gave birth to an SCP 1 hour later, which immediately underwent an event. Recruitment standards for D-Class personnel have since been modified to minimize the possibility of a second improper 110 Montauk procedure. 2316 died in an escape attempt inspired and assisted by an agent who had been exhibiting heightened stress levels due to prolonged exposure to 231 and attempted to use a said weapon to rescue 2316 and 2317. Both the agent and 2316 were killed in the resulting firefight. The fetus of 2316's then underwent another event. In the wake of this incident, 05 level personnel voted by unanimous decision to amend personnel policies. As of SCP-2317, she was successfully contained at the site. Following the repeated attempts to escape and commit suicide, as well as failure to contain 2311-6, 2317's containment procedures have been more stringent. 2317 is contained in a soundproofed containment cell and is always to be kept restrained to a hospital bed. 2317 is always to be kept confined to the bed, except during the 110 Montauk procedure. Hydration will be provided through an IV drip. Feeding will be carried out twice per day through a feeding tube by approved medical personnel who have not taken the Hippocratic Oath. Procedure 110 Montauk is to be carried out at least once every 24 hours by Class D personnel. During Procedure 110 Montauk, at least one security clearance for 231 personnel must always monitor the procedure by a camera. Following the procedure, all Class D personnel must return to their holding cells or explosive collars will be detonated. With the implementation of the 110 Montauk procedure, the suffering of 2317 can prevent an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario. For this reason, putting the poor girl out of her misery is not an option. Under no circumstances are narcotics, anesthesia, or other unapproved medications to be administered to 2317. She must be aware of what is going on for 110 Montauk to work. To this end, the Foundation will even amnesiac 2317 after a few implementations to obtain a better effect. Personnel who express sympathy towards 2317's plight or express a desire to rescue or sympathize with 2317 will be transferred to another project without delay. Any actual rescue attempts will be met with immediate termination. Due to the drop in staff morale, 05 level personnel has stated that not everyone who's worked on 231 is terminated upon leaving the project. However, personnel who have been assigned to scp-231 are allowed to take a Class A amnesiac before leaving the project if so desired. False memories are then implanted. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Which SCP do